All right. It is our first ever live edition of Pretty Decent Picks. So there's no chance to screw it up now, guys. We cannot we never do any editing at all, but now we really can't.
Hey, if we haven't done it yet, what's going to say we're going to need it today? We're going to be great. We'll nail it. So it'll all work out great.
That was exactly my thought when someone mentioned like, why don't you guys do it live? I was like, I don't know, because we don't do any editing, so we absolutely should. Gavin, who you rocking today? Can you hold up the jersey?
I got number 18, Peyton Manning. Led us to the 1 seed the last time we were in the 1 seed, and I think we all know how that ended up.
Broncos
Pretty darn
legend,
good.
Peyton Manning.
When I think Broncos playoffs, though, I still think Tim Tebow to Demaryius Thomas over the middle of the field, one play, overtime, game over. That's still like Broncos until the Broncos win with Bo Nix. That's probably going to be my favorite moment.
I might be aging myself, but I remember John Elway getting helicoptered as he ran for a first down against the Packers in what was it, 97, 96, something like that. So I wonder how many of our subscribers weren't even born yet in 96, 97. I probably don't want to know that, actually. Don't tell me that. If you weren't born before 96 or 97.
I've seen that video a ton of times, but I was nowhere close to being born when that happened.
Oh, dang it.
That's a tough seed. Hey, so I did try to set it up. Oh, here we go. The comment, it's pretty small. Let's get that bigger. Okay,
Beautiful.
there we go.
That's awesome.
That looks good. Where do we like it? I think that looks good. Okay, fellas, let's go. Time for some takedown takes. All right. Well, we got the comment section working. Thank you for testing that out, Deacon. JD, give us a little intro, set the scene for the playoff best ball situation before we get started. And let me clarify. I did say that I didn't think there was much edge in playoff best ball on this round. I loved last round. This round, I was skeptical. But I actually am seeing some edge, which is that people are just drafting all over the place and not stacking at all. For some reason, I thought no one will make mistakes the second time around. Everybody will learn their lesson the first time. That's not the case at all. People are not stacking. There might be overlay. So I actually kind of like it. Set the scene for us, would you?
Yeah, every year I feel like I say, wow, this year is so unique. But I think that, that's what makes this format so much fun is that everything has its own unique take. And this week it's really interesting because the highest scoring team last week was the Jaguars. It was ATN, it was Washington, it was Lawrence. So I look at, unfortunately, a lot of my own teams that made it through and a lot of the pods that I'm in. And there's a ton of Jag stacks that are just dead. There's already 3 or 4 people right off the top that nobody has. And then on top of that, if you look at Christian Watson was a very popular one of people are just hey, he's pretty good. He can get me a round of value.
I have a pod where every team but mine is either Jordan Love and or Trevor Lawrence. There are no quarterbacks at all other than my team, which has 2. So I almost hope my guys don't do well. I'm kind of all right, I'm going to advance, right? I have the only quarterback. So I almost hope my stacks don't go off. That way their advance rate is lower in the next round too. Just keep sneaking along, just the optimal thing that could happen. And people say this to me sometimes. They go, how could you get an unowned stack into the Super Bowl round? I mean, that just can't really happen, right? Well, the answer would be that you'd stack both sides of the same conference championship game, and your team would win with special teams and defensive touchdowns. Or just a totally random player scoring. Imagine the Niners have 2 defensive touchdowns and Brian Robinson scores 2 touchdowns. So they win and they go to the Super Bowl, but every single rostered 49er basically scores no points. So now whoever they're playing against, those will be the players who advance. The Niners teams will be dead. That's how you end up with totally. So it's never happened in the years that I've been playing this, 3 years. I've never seen a conference championship game go that way. But one of these years it will, and people will have their minds blown when one person stacked both sides of the same conference to advance the team through.
The other thing that this year is really interesting too is it's almost never that you find the number 1 seeds have single-digit ownership in the divisional round. But because every single 1 seed that played in the first round scored 20 points, Barkley did, Cook didn't, but Allen did, the Jaguars guys did, not ATM, but JSN is single-digit owned in some contest.
Right. It was so hard to get him through.
So yeah, it was so hard.
I got a team that I was so excited about. It was a Houston and Seattle team. Seattle obviously scored 0 in round 1, and Houston didn't do very well other than Woody Marks. but it has Nico Collins, and so I'm going to be taking 1-0. D-Clot says, hope y'all know if there's a takedown, this means you have to do this live every week. We might just start doing it live every week anyway. I don't really know why we weren't in the first place. So, yeah, there you go. All right, let's launch into the DFS slate because it's a fun one. It's there's an interesting dynamic on the slate I want to kind of lead things off with, which is that there are 3 studs. JD, can you just sort by total points? Just take off the position filter.
Oh,
like not quarterback, just yeah.
Gotcha.
So there are 3 studs that project better than all the quarterbacks. And it's, we talk about this a lot during the season. If you can park a lot of money in a guy who also has a great point per dollar value, that's like pretty rare, right? Like usually the studs will have lower point per dollar than the value guys because it's just easier to have a higher point per dollar when you cost less. Well, on this slate, the 3 best flex plays on a point per dollar basis are the 3 highest scoring plays. So I think an interesting build is like finding a way to jam them all in. And so my first thought was Houston. And so I thought we maybe could start the slate off with just kind of diving into Houston, because can you sort by total like point per dollar now? And I guess there's a lot of QBs, but if you kind of go down, you'll see that like if you go to a wide receiver, that's really where you're going to have to try to save some money. It's like tight end and receiver. And there's a lot of options to save a lot of money. Jake Tongas is being a great one, right? Because when Kittle's been out, he's been really solid. But the Xavier Hutchinson, Dalton Schultz, Christian Kirk, that tier of guys is where I felt like, okay, if you wanted to fully send a Houston stack, you might be able to afford all 3 of the studs, or at least 2 of them. And so I kind of started off with a deep dive into Houston. Are you guys? I'm going to go into that, and then I'll toss it to you guys because I know Gavin has a Broncos dive he wants to do, and then I know JD. We're just going to bounce around because there's not that many teams to talk about. So The interesting thing with Houston is that Christian Kirk had more yards last week than he'd had in like basically the entire season. I mean, I think he had like 200 yards all year, and he had 144 last week. I went back and watched every single play of that game, and what I noticed with Kirk is that it felt like they were identifying the defense, and then it became a Kirk play, not that they called the Kirk play in. And that was my first thought. I was, okay, it felt like they were checking to a Kirk play, which you'd almost never saw in the regular season. Every now and then you'd see it. Well, then I found an interview that Christian Kirk did this week with Rich Eisenhower. And Rich said, what was the difference for you? Like, what unlocked you this week? And Christian said, we caught him in man coverage quite a few times where we knew it was man. And it was third down, we knew it was man, and that's where I shine. And that's always been Christian Kirk, right? He's like this guy who plays 50 to 60% of snaps. And even in Jacksonville, when he was balling, he would play like 60% of snaps. He was in on every third down. And if they got man coverage, no one could stay with him, right? Like he was so quick against man coverage. So my first thought is I don't think Kirk is like poised for this massive breakout just because Nico Collins is out. Nico Collins is a zone destroyer. We put that in our article last week. Like he crushes teams who play zone. Christian Kirk is a man beater who they bring in on, clear passing downs. He only played like half the snaps, even though he had a huge game. So with Collins out, I think we just see Xavier Hutchinson and Jaden Higgins. And JD, I know you were kind of texting me saying, I think Higgins is the guy here, but Hutchinson just costs so little and actually played. Captain Zen is saying, like, I watched the game, but I don't remember how much of Kirk's workload was after Collins left. It really didn't change. Collins was, he missed a lot of that game. It was Xavier Hutchinson who actually ended up stepping into more snaps. He actually led the receiving room, and he's the cheapest on the whole slate. If I put the projections back up, Hutchinson is 3.4K on DraftKings. He's not expensive on FanDuel either. He's the guy that I'm most excited about here because he stepped into the biggest role. He actually was someone I really wanted to play on that showdown even before I knew Collins was going to be out because his role had been getting better. And I'd been noticing he'd been taking more snaps, and his expected fantasy points were actually on par with Jaden Higgins and Dalton Schultz. He just hadn't quite converted. I think he's the guy here that you just take the value on a slate where there's tons of studs. So that's my conclusion of all this is I think Dalton Schultz, I think is going to be a valuable guy. And Xavier Hutchinson is my next favorite. Higgins and Kirk are both viable. I don't dislike Kirk. I just think that it was just the way the matchup worked out where they just caught the Steelers. They identified their defense, and Kirk has always been the guy against man coverage when you need it on those short yardage plays. Like his touchdown was just a play, just a basic mesh across the field where the Steelers just lost him. Nothing about his game stands out to me as he's about to have another 100-yard game. So this could be Michael Wilson 2.0, and it turns out if Nico Collins misses some snaps in the game, that somehow means Christian Kirk goes crazy. But I don't think that it is. So, all right, enough of me talking. JD, how do you feel about that now that I've laid out my Texans thesis for you?
Yeah, so I agree with what you said about Kirk. It was pretty outliery just from a standpoint of you look at how many routes he ran, you look at his snaps and how much his target share was on those. It just doesn't happen very often. So it makes sense that it was oh, something happened we weren't expecting. And even watching them, none of them were really quick passes to Kirk. It was okay, 1, 2, 3. Oh, he's wide open. It was them kind of going through their progressions, and he happened to be the guy that was there. They weren't actually running the play for him as much, it seemed like, as well. So I think
the touchdown play was for him, but I mean, it's just a 2-yard mesh route. It's who cares who they ran that for? That could happen to anybody. And Kirk also had a few games during the season where he would randomly pop for 50 yards, or he'd have 8 targets, and then the next game he was right back down to 1 reception for 13 yards. So I think it's let's not overreact to that. He's already priced more than Hutchinson, which I wouldn't even do, and then he's also going to be more owned. So unless you're going full Texans onslaught, I don't really want to play Kirk.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that I do like Higgins over Hutchinson, even though he's more expensive. I think he's $1,200 more on DraftKings. I didn't have a chance to check FanDuel to see what it is there. But I think he's the one that's actually going to have his snaps and his route participation go way up, because Hutchinson was already playing a lot of the snaps because him and Nico played different roles. One of them was more of the Z, the other guy's more of the X. And I think Higgins will be the one that's in there a little bit more. And I found a stat that I thought was interesting on him, that he actually had, it was a super small sample size, obviously, because it was last week after Nico went out. He had 2.6 yards per route run. Just to kind of put that in context, Nico had 2.31 yards per route run during the season. So it was actually even better than what Nico had during the season. And Nico was still probably a top 8, top 10 fantasy wide receiver on the year. So yeah, I think
that's a good call out. I actually, Higgins is the guy that we said in the preseason, he will have a big year if Nico Collins misses a lot of time. Yeah. His role is so similar to Nico, his profile is so similar to Nico. So it makes sense that he didn't necessarily go off last week, but it's kind of hard. I mean, Nico left the game and then he came back and then he was ruled out in the second half. They didn't plan for that, right? So you don't really have a lot of stuff schemed up for Higgins already, but with a full week to prepare, I could see him running the Nico routes, which could be very valuable.
It also doesn't help when your quarterback suddenly can't catch a snap or hang onto the ball or anything like that, and so you end up running a lot less plays. So that played into it as well.
Yeah. And I will say, if you look at the actual Vegas props, they have all 3 of these receivers, all 4 really, if you take Dalton Schultz too, projected within 10 yards of each other. It's 31 to 41 is where everybody falls. So that's another reason I would just give me Xavier Hutchinson if he costs less, and he's also not that highly owned. But I kind of like using multiple Texans receivers here. I think there's value. CJ Stroud isn't running at all. Total pocket passer. Decently high scoring game potentially. I mean, none of the games are going to be shootouts really, but nothing wrong with having multiple Texans in my opinion. All right, let's get to a different team though, because and I will say the Texans do have the lowest total on the slate. It's just not crazy low. It's 19 points. Most of the other teams are between 20 and 23. So I think the public is afraid of the Texans, but I'm not that afraid of them.
I just think that with the 8 teams that we have, there's not any teams that I feel like the Carolina would have felt more like this about they could be someone that bombs offensively or something like that. I could see any of these 8 teams scoring 27 points and being yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's no awful teams left. There's no massive spreads. I mean, Seattle's -7 against San Francisco, but I don't know. Part of me wants to bet San Francisco, so I don't feel like there's a blowout looming, is what I should say there. Okay, toss it to Gavin for the Broncos. I know he's got some stuff on Bo Nix, and I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah. So for the Broncos, obviously the Bills defense was both sides, opposite sides of the spectrum this season. The run game, brutal. Pass game, great. And I think that we can capitalize on that very well with Bo Nix this game. He's sitting at a over-under rushing of 22.5 yards in this one. I know this is DFS, but
no, it's all right. People will be happy to have this over.
Yeah, but for a guy that's rushed for 49 yards and 42 yards in his last two games, with eight attempts and 9 attempts, and then going back to last season, he ran for 43 yards in the playoffs against the Bills. I think that with Sean Payton having all this time to game plan, he knows that he needs to keep the ball on the ground if they're going to beat the Bills, and I think that leads into the running back RJ Harvey of him being a great spot in this slate as well. I think
that's where I'm the most interested is Harvey, and mainly just because you only get one quarterback, but you could use 2 or 3 running backs. So and if we're expecting a lot on the ground, I'd rather bet the Bo Nix rush yards over, but then not play him in DFS. So yeah, I like Harvey as the DFS option there.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I was leaning. You'd like to bet the Bo Nix and then have Harvey on your team. I do think that I'd want to stay away from Courtland Sutton in this one. Although he is projected very high on a point per dollar spend, I believe he's pretty high.
Yeah, he's 2.3. Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's
on the projections.
I personally think there's a slate that I'd want to stay away from him. I just think that this secondary has been so good this year, and Sutton has also been pretty hit or miss in a couple of games. And I could see this one easily being one of those games that he does have an off game.
Well, I don't love that for my best ball bags, but I do agree with you that I think the Jags were insane last week to stop running the ball. They were absolutely gashing the Bills on the ground. They were averaging like 9 yards per carry at one point, and then they couldn't stop throwing it in the most critical moments, and it cost them the game. So I think that, Peyton being a much more experienced coach, I don't know if I'd say better than Liam Cohen, because I like what Liam Cohen's doing in Jacksonville, but he has the experience to say, all right, we see this on film. They came into the playoffs the worst run defense. The Jags absolutely annihilated them on the ground. We have our game plan right there. I mean, I think it's pretty clear what they should do, and I think Peyton is never been one to be shy about just running the ball when it's working, right? So, I'm with you. I could see Harvey getting 20 carries. I could see guys we don't want getting carries getting a lot of carries, but still a good spot. And that is why, JD, I texted you that I'm hesitant to play any Bills. And part of my hesitation is that I just think the Broncos are going to have these 7-8 minute long drives. And if the Bills don't keep up, they might just end up not getting enough snaps, not getting enough possessions in this game. So I agree, if James Cook gets 25 carries, then he's a good play. Can you put the Bills game up on the projections here? What the Bills got, yeah. So I totally get why the ownership is there on all 3 of those top guys, and then even Kincaid. But I just have this concern, like Gavin just laid out, that this game could just be a Broncos controlling possession. Even if the Broncos lose the game, I'm just worried. I just lean towards the under. I worry that it's going to be just a little slower than we want to see. I don't know. What's your take on the Bills, JD? Because I also have this fear that Shakir suddenly was just getting a ton of screen passes. Maybe that's just something they saw in the matchup where they just thought, okay, Jacksonville is really, really fast to get to the ball. They're a really aggressive team. They sprint to the ball and they tackle. So let's just run a bunch of fake screens to the left and then throw a screen to the right and get their whole defense moving side to side. That's what it felt like. And it caused a lot of 2-yard ADOT Shakir passes. I just don't feel like the Broncos defense has that same problem. So I worry that everyone thinks, oh, okay, playoff Shakir is going to get 9 targets. maybe not. That's my fear.
So I kind of have that fear for the Broncos because I don't believe in their defense getting off the field against Josh Allen. I think they've shown a lot of cracks the last like 6-7 weeks. The Jacksonville game was kind of the exclamation point on it when they went in there and just destroyed them. But they had people like in Washington, they had like kind of think Mariota kind of threw all over them. They kind of actually let Geno Smith kind of for him throw all over him late in the game, late in the year. So I think they actually have some cracks there, and I don't think their pass rush is kind of what they rely on to really get off the field. And Allen's just so good at controlling that and kind of just knowing how to avoid that as well. So I kind of like the Bills.
Allen does get away from the pass rush. The Broncos are really disciplined on the rush lanes, though. Like I would say, of all the teams that I wouldn't want to take a running quarterback against, it's them. There's this trend where everyone bets Josh Allen rush yards over in every single playoff game that he ever plays. And I think Vegas is about to absolutely clean up on that this week because the Broncos just are so disciplined this year at stopping that.
Yeah, the other thing that I'm not sure how big of an impact it will have, but it's good for Buffalo, is they just a couple hours ago activated Ed Oliver off of IR, and he will play this game against Denver. So they're going to have him back in the middle of that defensive line. Playing at tackle, so that'll definitely help them. Don't know if it's enough. Like the Broncos have a really good offensive line that run block really well. Even though Harvey had some pretty poor rushing numbers, he was really actually kind of saved by his receiving ability that made him end up looking pretty good and end up being a usable fantasy asset as well. But on the Bills side, I think too, like an underrated part of this is, and it's kind of like Houston. I almost kind of equate wide receivers a little bit this slate to an NBA slate where, you find out that the $3,500 point guard is going to be playing 30 minutes. And it's like, well, he could suck and still have 25 points. So I have to play him. Like, it doesn't really matter. Buffalo's kind of.
Who is that for you?
For the Houston guys, there's the two Houston guys. And then here for Buffalo, I think it's Brandon Cooks. I think Cooks is going to have to play almost every snap. He's really their only deep Z type receiver. And he's actually built some pretty fast rapport with Allen, who seems like he trusts him really early, and he's caught some downfield passes already. So I think he's the one that, even if it's just like 3 for 75 or something like that, if he ends up scoring double-digit DraftKings points at 4K, and he's actually lesser owned than the Houston guys by about, the Houston guys are about 11, 12%. He's about 6 to 7%. So I think he could be someone that ends up being really important in DFS and could be someone that ends up scoring the double-digit points for your value.
I agree. And I think that people are forgetting about the injuries that Buffalo just sustained because they're to such irrelevant players. At least they feel irrelevant. Like they're not fantasy relevant players. Sure. But really, I mean, you look at the two guys that they just lost, Gabe Davis and Tyrell Shavers. Those two guys each played more snaps than Brandon Cooks last week. So like you said, they may have to play Brandon Cooks way more than they ever planned on it. And it might be Curtis Samuel. It might be some Mecole Hardman a little bit. I can't imagine Keon Coleman becomes the guy. I mean, they certainly hate him. But maybe they have to. And maybe there's some, maybe he has the talent and we should be betting on talent. But I agree with you. Brandon Cooks is the guy that it feels like Allen actually trusts right now. He had the highest PFF grade of all of everyone on their team other than Allen and Shakir. And like I've already said, I feel like it was just a Shakir matchup. I mean, it's funny that Shakir is coming off a 20-point game, and I would still say he has a really low ceiling. And I know that sounds weird, coming off a 20-point game, but like all this guy does is catch screen passes. That was the best game he could ever have. He had 12 targets for 12 receptions, and they just threw screens to him over and over and over and over. That was like his season high. I just don't see it for him at 5K as chalk against a good defense that isn't undisciplined. And I'm not saying the Jags are undisciplined. They're just overly aggressive. And I think the way you take advantage of that is to do exactly what they did with Shakir. I don't see that with Denver. So I don't know. Am I overthinking it? I don't feel like Shakir is the guy, like whoever puts up big games.
So I know on a 4-game slate, we're kind of worried more about floor and the optimal scores and stuff like that. Having said that, I don't think you're wrong at all. I kind of feel the same way about him. Like even last week when we were saying, the Shakir chalk is starting to hurt, I was like, yeah, but only if he ends up catching like 15 balls is it really going to hurt. So of course he caught 12. So
he's coming off 5 games in a row where he pretty much scores 7 to 11 points every single game. Like at 5K, that's fine. And like maybe that's, he projects a little better than that because last week, playoff results are weighted more heavily than regular season roll. But if we subjectively believe that last week was kind of matchup based, just like we do for Kirk, then we can ignore the projections a little bit and say, I think Shakir's probably over projected and therefore over owned. So he's a fade to me. Are you interested in Kincaid, or is it really just Brandon Cooks? Because I'm with you on Brandon Cooks. I think he's the guy that I'd want.
I think it's just Cooks. And the bigger reason, too, is I think Shakir kind of like he eats against zone type stuff. He finds those holes really well and kind of sits down and falls down for the most part where he catches the ball. And Cooks is more the deep threat. And the Broncos are kind of the opposite than the Jags in that standpoint, where they're going to play a lot of man coverage. And so I just don't think Shakir is going to be as valuable in that situation. And it's going to end up being Cooks. So I'm kind of like Josh Allen, James Cook. Yeah, I always see their value in fantasy. I can see where they're going to have big ceilings. They can be viable because of that. But outside of those two, I think Cooks is really the only other Bronco I'm looking at playing. There's several other tight ends I'd rather. Kincaid's not terrible, but you look at it at the context of the slate, there's like 3 or 4 other tight ends I'd rather play.
I'm with you. And excuse me for the podcasting faux pas of changing outfits in the middle of the show. It is getting breezy out here, all right? And also, JD, I listened to you in the Discord. You said a beer wasn't stiff enough, so I got an old-fashioned for the show. But that's also cooling me down. So anyway, Gavin, as a Broncos fan, what do you think their defense's weakness is when we think about all the players on the screen right now for Buffalo? Do you agree with our take that Shakir's overpriced?
Yeah, I think that Shakir's overpriced from what you're saying of just it was a matchup thing. I watched that entire game, and even the commentators were saying over and over they are getting the ball out so quickly because they knew the Jags were flying around. But I think that looking at the Broncos defense, their weak point is their best strength, which is they get to the quarterback so quickly. I think that can open up some holes for James Cook this week. If I wanted to go to any player on the Bills, I'd be looking towards James Cook.
Yeah, and if I'm the Bills, I'm thinking that's probably our best point of attack. The hard part is this slate is loaded with good running backs. So as much as I do like James Cook, it's not like he's just this easy plug and play because I also really like CMC and I like Harvey. And it's possible to play him. Sully's asking the who is Surtain going to guard? And I don't think there's like a clear answer here. I mean, I hope it's not Brandon Cooks, but it could be. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, what if they say, hey, you know what? Shakir's not going to beat us deep, but Cooks might. So let's just kind of put Surtain over there to not worry about. That's the one thing that I don't think they're going to do. That.
Will they just leave Surtain on one side though, and just say who cares who he's covering?
Yeah, they could end up doing that because there's not really one guy to follow. I could see them just being like, hey, just shut down your side of the field. We'll tilt things the other direction and, we'll figure out on the fly what we need to do. But it's a good question because I've thought the same thing. I'm just like, okay, usually it's easy to be like Surtain on this guy, but Buffalo kind of like fits into what you want to do to attack Denver where they're not giving you like the clear guy to take away, which is how they usually build their defense by who is Surtain going to take away? And they don't really have that building block to start things off with this week.
Right, I know. How troublesome for Denver's defense that there's not even a single good receiver they can worry about.
It's a good problem to have.
It is, yeah. No, it's funny seeing the Bills people on social media just so outrageously confident that there's just how could the Bills lose? And it's like I can think of a lot of ways the Bills could lose. I mean, I don't think that they're horrible, but they're not. I don't think they're that impressive. They really deserve to lose to the Jags.
This is the year that, honestly, I kind of appreciate how good Allen is because I'm like, okay, any other quarterback probably loses by 10 to 14 points last week, and he didn't. So I'm just kind of like, that's just how good he is, and they need to get him some help.
Yeah, it was like when
he is elite.
When Joe Burrow said that the Bengals would have lost he would have lost playing how he did any game ever. That was the same as last week. If it was any other quarterback in the league playing for the Bills are not playing this week, but they have Josh. So
yeah, it's interesting. All right, let's get through Does anyone else have like a game or a team that they want to deep dive into, or should we just go position by position now and just talk more about the slate as a whole?
I want to talk about the Patriots, and then we could actually probably leave the AFC from there. They're kind of the last AFC team to touch
Yeah,
on.
true. Let's
and
just
then
finish off the AFC.
So, I love Drake May this week at quarterback. I think when you're going to attack, I think this Houston defense is way better than Denver's defense. Like, that's the best unit to me. It's either them or Seattle's defense is the best actual unit left in the playoffs. It's one of those.
I agree. I think it's Houston, but yeah.
And Houston does two things that can kind of hurt them. One is their pass rush gets really aggressive. Their quarterback can dodge it and run. And the second one is they're kind of susceptible to deep balls. The two things Drake May does really, really well is throw an amazing deep ball. And he showed last week that they kind of took the handcuffs off. They're letting him go. Like, he pulled it down. And it might have just been more instinct when it's your first playoff game. Things are a little different. And it might have just kicked in the instinct of pull it down and run. Might have come into him more. Like, he had like at 1.6 for 61. I can't remember what he ended up with rushing, but it ended up being, I want to say 70 yards or so that he ended up with.
He ended up with 10 rushes for 66 yards.
66. So he didn't quite have 70. Okay. Yeah. So the fact that he ran so much, I think one of my favorite props this week so far actually is I think he's around like 37 or 38 rushing yards. And I think that might be a good way to attack Houston in the props market. And I think
I'll add. Oh, I was just going to say, I'll add that at UNC, he would run more in big games. So that's definitely a part of his DNA is that, I don't know if it's that he gets juiced up for the game or if the coaches are telling him, we know you want to run. We usually tell you to cool it a little, but now you can do whatever you want. But whatever it is, he runs more.
Yeah, so I kind of like him, and I kind of like Booty, maybe Diggs, but I kind of really like Booty if he's going to be the deep threat again for them. If Hollins isn't going to play, because the way that I see New England winning this game is he runs for 2 or 3 first downs on third down, able to keep the chains moving, and it hits 2 or 3 really awesome deep balls that end up scoring, 17, 20 points, and their defense is able to kind of hold Houston down. Like, I don't see a whole lot of path for them to win this game, and that's the one that I'm like, okay, if that happens, I can see the blueprint to be able to win this game. So I really love Drake, and not really feeling a whole lot more on the Patriots side. But Drake and one of his receivers, I think are really great.
If they fall behind, then you're still okay having May and Booty, right? So it's like, even if you're kind of wrong that they win the game this way, they could still end up benefiting from a good script where they still end up trying a lot of deep shots to Booty. So yeah, I really do agree with that. I think that is where you could attack the Texans. So I love the Drake May prop. I don't hate him in DFS. I don't think he's going to be super high owned. Do you want to put all the QBs on stage? And let's take a look at all the options. It's Stafford by far has the highest yardage prop. So that's something to consider. He's like 25 yards ahead of everybody else. But then you've got the rushing props, of course, for guys like Allen, Nix, May, Williams, that kind of levels it out. So it's really everybody and CJ Stroud. So I'm not I don't hate playing Stroud, but it is hard to imagine a guy who doesn't run at all being the highest scorer on the slate. But it's possible, right? I mean, there's not a huge gap. If you just sort by total points, it's not a huge range between all these guys. There's a bunch of guys clumped in between Allen and Stroud. Who are you most interested in? I do like the May Booty stack. Bo Nix actually is the highest point per dollar other than Sam Darnold. And I think we kind of are ho-hum about actually playing him in DFS. Are you interested in playing Darnold? Because they're expected to be to have the highest total. Not expected to be trailing, but expected to be a higher scoring game. Who do you like most at QB, guys?
I think May might be my favorite to play, honestly, just because I think it's him and Nix, just because I like the combination with their rush yards as well, and their running ability. The third one that I kind of like would be Caleb Williams for that same reason. He can, he doesn't run as often, but he can have some bigger runs, and he just makes throws that other quarterbacks can't make. So I just think his ceiling might be the highest. And
the Rams have looked a little bit flawed. I mean, I think people are overestimating how great this team is. They're like a 3-point favorite. I mean, they're not this infallible giant. And I kind of think the Bears win. I mean, it's going to be 30 degrees, and this Rams team just doesn't do very well in a freezing cold game. I don't think. That's kind of what I've been hearing. Maybe everybody's lying to me. I have not personally verified these statements, but I have read and seen people claim that Stafford does not perform very well in freezing cold games. So,
and the three of us kind of established before the pod that I'm an old man, and I can verify that when it's 8 degrees outside, that your back and your bones feel a little different in your late 30s than they do.
And Stafford's already a little banged up, right? Like he's already not doing great. Now put him in the freezing cold. I mean, the thing that makes it hard to fade the Rams is that 70% of their targets last week went to Adams and Puka. So if they're moving the ball at all, you probably get punished by not playing their top 2 receivers. So you kind of have to just be like all in on the Rams sucking, or you have to play them. I think they make this slate harder. I think that if they weren't on it, I would be really confident in kind of my hodgepodge of my favorite plays. But with the Rams on it as the last game too, you could easily be sitting in first. And if the Rams put up 300 yards of passing offense, and that probably means Puka and Adams are optimal, and you're toast. And Stafford's yardage prop is like 265 yards. That's why I brought that up, because it's uncomfortable that the guy with the highest yardage prop by far funnels 70% of his targets to 2 players. So it really forces you to be on the under for Stafford, or you got to have Adams and or Puka. So where do you guys stand on that whole situation?
So I think that how concentrated it became actually makes it easier as far as like not wanting to play Stafford at quarterback. Like if he throws for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns, I'm just fine having Adams or Puka or both or something like that and not him. I also think, when we get to running back, I think Williams is kind of interesting, because what if he just scores twice at the goal line and ends up eating up 2 of the 3 touchdowns they score or something like that. So that's kind of where I'm looking, is if I'm not playing either of the receivers, I want to play Williams on those rosters, because I want to have at least one Ram. It was kind of like last week.
Well, does it have to be Kyren, or could it be Blake Corum? Because I feel like their workloads have been pretty much even, but the actual output has been different, and it's making people think that Kyren is still this workhorse, but their expected fantasy points are like nearly even lately. But just like last week, yet again, Kyren put up 15.5 actual to Blake Corum 7.5. I feel like there's got to be a game eventually where Blake Corum outperforms him, right? Like there's not a massive skill gap that I can see. So I kind of feel like Kyron's just getting lucky, and it's just confirming to everyone that he's still the guy when the actual workload feels like it's pretty split.
Yeah, I was so wrong about the workload thing. I thought for sure it was going to tilt back towards Kyren or Kyren, however he says it, in the postseason, but it was basically 50-50 down the middle again last week. So yeah, I think Corum as well is just as viable, because what if Corum takes the touchdown and Williams doesn't get it or something like that? So
yeah, can you put running back up on the screen? I think this is an interesting potential leverage spot. Is just that the whole field, the whole field went into last week. We talked about it on the pod last week, right? Everybody went in saying, "All right, Kyron's probably going to take way more of the work." I think we bet Corum's under, and we got hooked by a yard. We deserved to lose because he played tons, but I thought the process was right. Is that everybody is thinking the same thing, but his prop is still so high. Well, Vegas was right. They ended up being a 50-50 split, and yet because Kyren outperformed him in fantasy points, I think people are going to look at their game logs, and it's just going to confirm their priors, and they're going to say, okay, so Kyren's way better. And part of this projection is that Vegas is giving Kyren higher props, but I think Corum is like really sneaky. It's so hard to actually click on him because there's so many good running backs on the slate. But it's like, keep this in mind for the Sunday only slate or the showdown at the end. I think Corum is a really good leverage play. I just don't know if I'll have him on the main slate, but on that 2-gamer on Sunday, give me Blake Corum there.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, JD.
Go for it, Gavin. No, you're good. Go for it.
I was just going to say, I think going back to what you were saying before with at the very top, with those 3 studs, if you're trying to get as many as them in, a guy like Blake Corum, that's, he's not top end talent for the pricing. He's still 5,100. It's not like he's dirt cheap, but it's a good place to look if you're trying to get in as many guys as you can.
Can you put all the running backs on the screen, JD?
Yeah. I also think kind
So
of going to that, when we go into that though as well, like getting all three of those studs we talked about, because most rosters I think will have one, maybe two. I think having none
yeah,
of them too, like all three or zero, I think are two very viable
those are
ways to get
both
a
going
little
to be
different.
very unique. Yeah, both those paths are super unique. I just can't fade Christian McCaffrey. He's just so good. Like I could see Puka or JSN getting kind of taken out of the game. And I guess the argument for fading CMC is just Seattle held them to 3 points last time they played. So what if they do that again? But I don't know. I mean, they benefited from like a tipped pass in the end zone that led to there was a lot of things that just didn't go right for San Francisco. And also, you got to consider like Vegas is telling you San Francisco is going to score 20, just like all the other teams on the slate. So unless you're really ready to bet on their team total under, like if they get to 20, McCaffrey probably goes nuts. So it's so hard for me to fade him. Of the three studs, who are you guys most comfortable fading?
Let's get pure ownership up here real quick first. They're about the same, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so there's really no decided difference from that.
Yeah.
But
JSN
honestly,
being the highest does make me like he's already my least favorite even before like ownership.
yeah, he's my least favorite for sure. But I also kind of like, because I think CMC, I think he's the one most likely to get steamed, where people are just kind of like, how do I not play CMC? But
Yeah.
they ended up running 42 plays last time against Seattle too, and their defense hasn't gotten any better, and Seattle's run game hasn't gotten any worse. So I could see them just controlling, and that's what could hurt JSN. Is I could just see them giving 45
Right.
carries to the two running backs, and they just hold on to the
Yeah.
ball for 45 minutes. I mean, not that long, but for like 40 minutes.
No, I know
the ball.
both of those studs are actually tied together, and they would both be crushed by Seattle just dominating on the ground.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some risk to playing one without the other. Like you're both, they're both correlated in that way. That is interesting. I feel like we haven't even talked about Rashid Shaheed yet. I think now is the reasonable time to get into it. We've got a pretty good source with Seattle. They've been right in the past. Who tells us that they've been drawing up plays for Rashid Shaheed this week. Not only are they going to look for him on a couple of handoffs, which we posted in the Discord, they've got a couple of running plays scripted for him. They're also looking to throw a couple of deep shots to him. They think that they've got to try to take the top off this defense with Shaheed. So that also that would help CMC if they could score on a 50-yard pass real quick and get off the field. That would hurt JSN if they are looking for Shaheed on a deep shot. So, I think Shaheed is a really interesting piece because if you look, I mean, he's not projecting very well, and nor should he. He really hasn't done a whole lot. But apparently they use this bye week to try to install more packages for him and install more plays for him. So I can't say I'm super excited to click on Shaheed, projecting as bad as he is. But if you just assume that the subjective info we have is worth like 2 points, up from 7 to 9, well, now he actually projects pretty good, right? Like it doesn't take a whole lot of a projection boost to go from a bad play to projecting for a pretty good one. So I think I'm going to try to force him in, as uncomfortable as it is to click on him, because I want to try to utilize that subjective edge that we have that nobody else has, rather than saying, I'm going to jump on some other guy at that price who projects 10 yards better, but we don't know anything about it, that the market doesn't know. Are you guys with me on that? Do you think it's worth playing Shaheed, or do we just bet his props and move on?
I think he's a bet the props and he's playable in DFS. Like, don't get me wrong, he's usable, but I'm not sure when I compare him to like Higgins and Cooks, who are in the same range. It's just kind of like that dart throw range for DFS. It's kind of like, okay, none of these guys are super high owned. None of them project super well. So I think he kind of fits just within that same grouping as, hey, he can be a value wide receiver and it's worth playing him. But I'm not sure that you prioritize one over the other within that kind of value wide receiver group for DFS.
Yeah. What do you think, Gavin?
Yeah, I think I'd stay away from him in DFS just because from what you were saying before is they're trying to get him a couple runs and stuff, which is great to bet on prop wise. But if he takes those three handoffs, say for for 2 yards. That doesn't really move the needle in DFS.
Give him a little more than that. But yeah, no, I agree. Even if he takes it for 20 yards, who cares? No, I agree. He's got to convert one of the deep shots. That's the part of that message that I think is sticking in my head for DFS is like, okay, if this guy catches a 50-yard touchdown, then he's the nuts. So that's where I'm like, I wasn't expecting them to take a lot of deep shots to Shaheed because I thought the 49ers front is really weak. They should just be running it a lot. But if their plan is run, play action, 50-yard shot to Shaheed, then that's more interesting to me.
Yeah, the place that I actually kind of like him too is that's actually where Darnold's been like making his hay this year. He actually was the 4th highest rated quarterback on throws over 20 yards this year, and also had the
he was good last year too.
Target percentage. Yeah, so I mean he's still really good at that, and that's something where their bread is butter. I've been kind of surprised that Shaheed hasn't been a bigger deal in Seattle yet. Honestly, like I thought for sure it was going to be a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
He's going to have a couple games where he had those 70-yard touchdown receptions that we've seen. But yeah, I think overall he just kind of falls in the same boat JSN does. Where what if they run it 45 times? I just don't have a great feel for that if I'm being honest. So but I still would play him. I wouldn't X him out.
Perfect segue. Captain Zen says, "What do we think about playing both Seattle running backs together?" I'm okay with it. I don't mind it because if you're right, if you get that right, then you're probably going to hit on both guys, right? Like if you get this, what you just said, what if they run it 45 times? Then, certainly possible. Another good question. Deacon says, how do you think the Darnold oblique injury plays into the Shaheed narrative? Player name's not spelled right, but good question. I do worry a little about that because, I mean, a playoff game, you just wouldn't expect the starting QB to actually be questionable. You would expect by now there'd be a report that says, sure, yeah, he's technically listed, but obviously he's going to play. We haven't gotten that report yet. That is a little weird. I mean, I, of course, assume he's playing, but I don't even know. How does an oblique injury impact the ability to throw long?
It's bad. Like
it does really seem bad. Like it would be. I mean, I think about it. It seems bad. It seems like it would really hinder me. So that's a good question, and maybe that keeps me off. Okay, all right. We're blaming autocorrect. That's fine. That's fine. For the name spelling, but it's a good question. I do. It does make me think maybe we just bet the rush yards over. And you know what? If he catches a deep ball, he's going to be so low owned that you can just be glad it wasn't JSN. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe the actionable takeaway here is we just don't play JSN. I will say when it comes to the two running backs, Charbonnet really seems to be the one that they're like preferring lately. And, going into last week, that was one of the things that we were told, or in the last week of the season, is that Charbonnet is really the guy that they're trusting right now. So didn't hear anything, from our source about that situation specifically, but it does feel like Charbonnet has been the guy that's been getting the more valuable touches down the stretch. So it's interesting that he projects worse. What do you think about that? I mean, I know Kenneth Walker was a little better on the season, so that's where the projection comes from, but they haven't played a playoff game. But I think for a little lower ownership and a little lower price, I'd rather have Sharp.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm trying to find the stat now. I know I came across it on Twitter and totally forgot about it, and I thought I saved it. So, of course, I can't find it. So, no worry. We're not live or anything like that to try and find this real quick or anything like that.
I wouldn't edit it out anyway. I'm not going to spare you like that, JD. I'm not going to spend my time editing to make you not look like you're scrolling around. Gavin, do you have a preference between Sharps and Kenneth Walker, or are you not playing them? Where'd you stand on that?
I'm leaning Charbonnet on that one. He outtouched Kenneth Walker in both of the last 2 games of the season, and I know that you can look at that 2 ways. You can look at it as recency bias, or you can look at it as it's right before the playoffs. Who do you need the most right now? And to me, it leans a little bit toward Charbonnet, and I think, but I do agree with what you were saying before. I don't mind playing both of them. I think that both of them are still going to get their touches.
Yeah, well, the stat I finally found on Charbonnet too shows, so in weeks 1 through 9, he had 2.9 yards per carry, which was 44th in the league. But in weeks 10 through 18, he had 4.8 yards per carry, which put him clear up to 16th when not filtering out anybody. And he had an 8.7% explosive rush rate, which was 14th during that time too. So he definitely got better as the year went along. So
yeah,
it
and
makes sense why they went
he's not a guy people think of as being explosive, but
No.
he became explosive down the stretch, and it's not yet baked into his full season totals. And so like the projections are just not going to really give him credit for the player that he improved into as the season went along. And it feels like the coaches are really noticing the improvement and they want to reward it, or they just want to use him because they're trying to win the game and he's playing really well. So I think Charbonnet is the guy. Yeah, like when we're filling out a header for this slate, Charbonnet is the guy I think that makes it. And Walker probably gets cut, but you can still play both. I think if you want to just go full Seattle domination, you just play both their running backs, maybe the defense, and that's it. I think that's viable. Also, it's worth pointing out. Can you put the defenses up on the screen? One more little tidbit for Rashid Shaheed is that the clear best defense is the Seahawks. They got Purdy having seeing ghosts back there on their last game. Purdy has been known to throw a lot of interceptions, and Rashid Shaheed is the kick returner for Seattle. So imagine how electric it would be if you did play Seattle and Shaheed if he returned a kick for a touchdown. I mean, that would be – you'd get 12 points on one play. That would be pretty incredible. So it did cross my mind as I was building my lineup, and I found myself wanting to play Seattle D, that having Shaheed would be even more fun. Again, another showdown thing you could consider. You know, if you don't – this is a perfect opportunity to play Shaheed and Seahawks D on showdown.
The old double dip. You got to love it.
Exactly. What defenses are you liking while we're here? I think that it's really spread out. Like if you look at the ownership, I think they priced defense really well. So like hats off to DraftKings for pricing it well. Yeah, but who are you liking the most at defense this week?
I kind of like the Broncos where they're priced at because I could see Allen kind of getting into force it mode. And while we talked about the good of Josh Allen and what that does on that side, like he's going to be the one that opens himself up most, I feel like, to being able to be picked off or being able to take a big sack or something like that if he were to take one or something like that. So I'm surprised how cheap they are. That's kind of why I like them, is how cheap they ended up being under 3K and being a little bit more on the value side. But they were someone that I wasn't expecting to like. I thought they'd be priced up by like the Texans, but they're far enough apart from them that that's kind of a defensive profile where, okay, I'm playing this defense because the defense is really good, not because of the quarterback I get to pick on. But, you know, I could see it going south as well, and Denver all of a sudden rolling at home and having the defense, you know, with a couple big picks or something like that, and it ends up being the highest scoring one.
So last week we kind of picked on Stafford as the QB with the most turnover-worthy plays in the last couple of months with his hand injury. I don't know if that's the cause of it, but he has the most turnover-worthy plays. And we got it right. I mean, not only did he throw a pick, but he really threw two. And Puka Nacua played an excellent defensive back that actually won the game for them. I mean, if that gets picked off, they probably lose. Puka bats it away. They go down, score a touchdown, they win the game. So Stafford really did struggle. And I don't mind picking on him a second time, but I don't know. What do you think? Is Bears D too crazy? I mean, they project the worst, but like every single defense projects between like 4 and 7. So, what do you think there?
We kind of talked about it last week that they just kind of have this thing going where they can create turnovers too. So they have that kind of ceiling as well. That I don't mind that mix of taking on Matthew Stafford, whose hand is banged up, and they're kind of good at finding the turnovers anyway. I like that for that reason, especially if they're going to be probably the lowest owned. I mean, like you said, not that anyone's like super high owned or anything, but if they're going to be 10% owned, when there's only 8 choices, like I'll take that as well.
Yeah, and really, like I know they project 9%, but if one of these teams was going to be 4%, you'd have to guess Bears, right? Because like so many people just believe in the Rams just so much. But Stafford came into the playoffs leading in turnover-worthy plays over the last couple of months, and then he led everybody in turnover-worthy plays again last week. So, Stroud had the most turnovers because he couldn't hold on to the ball in the pocket, but that's not as predictable, and I don't think the Pats have the pass rush to cause that. So, and I don't want to pay $3,600 for my defense. I mean, I think the Bears at 2,400 are really interesting in GPPs. I will say because all the defenses project really similar, and you're talking about a bunch of quarterbacks who are really good, there's no great option. I would just play whoever fits. Like if you end up with 2,800 salary, play the Broncos. If you end up with 2,600 salary, you can play the Bills. Like it's fine. Like it doesn't really matter that much. This is a bit of a crapshoot. One team might get lucky with the return touchdown or a pick six, or more likely a fumble six, really, with the way that the randomness and the way these quarterbacks are. These quarterbacks don't put the ball in harm's way very often. There's really, other than maybe Purdy and Stafford, none of these guys are really putting the ball in harm's way. So, yeah, I don't have a strong stance. Gavin, do you have a strong stance on defense this week?
No, that was I said it last week, I think, too, that it's just with all these great quarterbacks, like they made it this far for a reason. One of the main reasons is that they protect the football. I think that, like you were just saying, it really is just going to be who fits into your build. How much money you have left over, and who do you have a little bit of a better feeling on than the rest of them is kind of how I'm looking at it this week.
Yeah, and one of the benefits to just playing whoever fits, is that you avoid any mental biases that might get you onto the chalk by accident. We've seen this before, right? It's like there's a defense at 2,800, couple at 2,700, and there's one everybody likes at 2,600. And you feel more comfortable with them, so you leave 200 salary on the table, you play them, and they end up being 30% owned. And then you think, oh, well, I would way rather have had the single-digit ownership $2,800 defense. So I kind of like, in general, just playing the defense that I land on a slate like this where there's no clear great option. Seattle is the best option, but they, especially in high stakes, they could be like 40, 50% owned. So I don't know if I'm super gung-ho about it. I'll do it. If I land on it, if I have 3,200, I'll do it. I'm not going to avoid the best defense just for the sake of the ownership, but I'm also not going to prioritize it. It's just a position that it's whatever fits. Okay, usually we end the show on defense, but I don't think we've gotten to tight end yet, have we?
No, I don't think we hit tight end. Did we finish running back? Did anybody have anything at running back that we...
we've kind of just been going team by team. So we kind of did San Francisco, Seattle. What's the last? I guess it's kind of Chicago is the last team that we haven't really talked about. I will say this for the Rams. We talked about how they just really prioritize two guys, as everyone would expect. The one thing that is interesting about the Rams is that Devontae Adams was actually super involved last week, coming off of injury. People said, oh, he had kind of a down game coming off injury. I don't think that's why he had a down game. I think it just kind of worked out that way. But he got a ton of targets. He had 22.4 expected fantasy points. He only had 12 actual. Puka had 35 actual on 33 expected. Those two guys got all the expected fantasy points. There was nothing left in the passing game. Parkinson did score 11 actual points, but he only had 4 expected. Everything valuable went to Adams and Nakua. Adams at 6.5K is pretty appealing. He's way less owned than Puka, and on like a cost to expected fantasy points ratio, he's basically even with him. So I think I'd rather save the salary and get the lower ownership and go Adams. And I also could see him getting back into his red zone domination, which we did not see last week. What do you guys think about those top end guys?
I think you can kind of further leverage JSN by playing Nakua with Adams, with both Seattle running backs. That's kind of a build that I was just kind of thinking about, oh, hey, this actually works out really well because we kind of like JSN the least. And actually, most weeks I don't love Puka, but I don't know. I think this is a really silly thing to have 3 touches change my mind. But if they're going to give him goal line carries, I'm kind of okay, that changes a lot of his ceiling in my mind. But, that gives him a lot more there that he's going to have to create some touchdowns when he's not getting a ton of targets in the end zone.
The goal line, the touchdown carry was a throw that was only technically ruled a pass. It was only technically ruled a carry because it was slightly backwards, but that really almost should have been a pass. It was so close. I'm surprised they even ruled that a carry. I agree. They'll scheme him the ball. If they're just going to throw him screens to the goal line, that is annoying if you fade him. He's the toughest fade to me. JSN's a lot easier because we've seen him get stifled, whereas it seems like Puka just somehow never gets stifled.
Yeah. I will say the one guy that he was kind of last week, but I think he might be kind of coming back into a bigger role. He's kind of at the bottom here. Odunze did get 6 targets last week.
Yeah.
And Moore got 7, and Moore happened to have the touchdown and the catches. Whereas Odunze, it felt like every time Williams targeted him, that's when he did his 10 yards over his head throw. So,
I know. He got all of his worst throws. I know, because we had his over, so I was watching him pretty carefully all game. He ended up with 11.5 expected fantasy points. Luckily, that late heroics from Caleb did get us the over that we deserved. But it was sweaty all night long, and he had a red zone target that just didn't quite happen, and then Caleb overthrew him a few times, like you said. So yeah, Odunze actually led all their receivers in expected fantasy points. Actually, I think he was just behind DJ Moore, but it was like they were very close. And like you said, Moore ended up with the touchdown, so he had like 18 fantasy points. But their roles were very similar. Colston Loveland's role was insane, but I don't know if that's was a bit of a matchup thing or if we should really expect that level of insane target volume again. But hard to say.
Segue into tight end, but I love Loveland. I didn't make no bones about it. I haven't for the last month. He really is my favorite. As much as I love Odunze, Loveland would have to be 60% on before I didn't really want to play him. To me, this is much different than Kittle being far and away the most expensive tight end last week. I think Loveland has a way higher ceiling. I just think his route participation, his yards per route run has just been so amazing the last 6 weeks that I think he's kind of the main guy right there in Chicago in the pass game right now. Him and Caleb seem to have something going together, and he seems to really trust him. And every big third down, it ends up being Colston Loveland that's coming down with the big catch to convert a first down. So yeah,
it does feel that way. Okay, so I do have to say though, the thing that is making it hard for me to play Loveland, making it hard for me to play Dalton Schultz, is that the last 3 games that George Kittle missed, Jake Tongas had 7 catches for 60 yards and a touch, 6 catches for 58 yards, and 7 catches for 41 and a touch. So how do we not play Jake Tongas? I mean, he's not even projecting to be crazy chalky. On a point per dollar basis, he's way better than everybody else. And the last 3 times Kittle missed, this guy's averaging 50 yards and a touchdown. He's basically getting the Kittle volume. So they speak highly of him. They seem to really like him. I guess I'm just kind of if he was 50% owned, I'd think about it. But at 24% ownership, if he doesn't get steamed up significantly, then he's a must-have to me. So I guess I'm willing to flex a tight end if it gets me everybody else I want. But if I'm not flexing a tight end, then it's hard for me to get to Loveland, hard for me to get to Schultz as much as I like them.
Yeah, and I will say with Tongas as well, that makes me wonder, why would I play Barner for $200 more? I like Barner. He's totally fine.
Right.
But
I do too.
Is so different that's
totally usually our Seattle source, I'd say 4 of the last 6 weeks, our Seattle source says it's a Barner week. And they didn't say that this week. They said it's the first time we've heard Shaheed's name come out of their mouth ever. So that makes me even less excited about Barner because we almost always hear that it's another Barner week. So based on practice stuff. So if they're not running a lot of Barner in practice, no way I'm playing him over Jake.
Who are you liking, Gavin? Anyone at tight end standing out to you?
Honestly, I was leaning towards Tongas just because I believe I pronounced that correctly, but just because it's a spot where I thought that lots of people would lean away from, even though San Francisco, they love their tight ends there. So I was really glad to hear Justin all over him. So that'll definitely reinforce me going for Tongas this week.
I will say, from a tight end standpoint, why would I not play Tongas, Loveland, or Schultz? Schultz at this ownership is nuts, if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
he's going to be so involved. So
Agreed.
Why would I not play those 3? It's kind of my thought about tight end. It's it's just
I agree. I think you could just narrow it. And earlier when we were talking about the Bills, I didn't mention Kincaid, and that's why. I just don't see how I get to him. I don't hate him. I if you want to bet his over 41.5 yards, be my guest. But I can't play him in DFS because it's those 3 guys to me are just so clearly the best plays. So yeah, I'm glad you said that, JD, because I am totally with you.
Yeah, and also if you want to talk about, I know some people have interest in like the Rams tight ends because they use them so much, but with both of them there, they just kind of eat each other's ceiling away, I feel like. And I'm guessing more than I was if it's just Parkinson or if it's just Higbee. And I don't really want to guess on either of them. So pronounce with the
we've got
soft G.
We've got a cow fan here letting us know that it's just, what is it, just Tong? Or is it I have no idea. I've watched quite a few of their games, and it just escaped my mind how they refer to this man.
One of those names that I just know I'm always saying wrong.
Soft G. So I guess Soft G would be Tones.
I think it's like a J means, right? Like Tonjas.
All right, Zen, we're gonna need further. All right, here we go. Tonjes. Okay, Tonjes. Yeah. I'm glad he put an E there. We just call him Jizzman. Yeah, all right. Tonjes. All right. Poor guy.
Issues there.
That's a tough one. Yeah. Okay. He's the best play at tight end. There we go. All right, I think that's all the position groups. Obviously, we'll do a full slate breakdown on the site. So anybody that we skipped over here, that you need to know about, we'll cover. Any closing questions from the chat? Are we supposed to do that? It's the first live stream. I don't know if we're supposed to open the floor one more time, but I'm excited for this weekend. I love the way they stagger these games. There's just something about these NFL playoff rounds where it's just like Saturday night, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night. It's just perfect. I mean, you can't beat it.
Yeah, and I especially love they get it right on this divisional weekend every time that I really like, where the Sunday game's like a couple hours earlier too, and it's not like later in the day. Like I still have my evening afterwards.
Yeah,
it's like, oh
no, they definitely nail it. And I will say, not that this really means much, but it means a little bit. This slate in particular, this 4-gamer of the divisional round, historically, I have done so well. I was looking back at some screenshots that I don't really post on Twitter anymore, but just like for myself, I had them. And I have crushed this slate year after year. So something about a 4-gamer that plays out one at a time where you can make adjustments and tweaks as it goes. I really like it. Zen wants to know our favorite GPP quarterback. So go back to quarterback, JD. I know you said Drake May was yours. I'm hesitant to even say one right now because I'm not that confident. I don't know who I'm going to play. So I don't want to just like throw one out there and then have to backtrack later. With that preface, I would say Brock Purdy is who I have right now. Like I have a lineup saved. It's like a filler lineup. I will certainly make tweaks, but I have Brock Purdy, McCaffrey, and Tonjes. Yeah, that's my current stack. And I also don't mind Jawan Jennings. We didn't really talk about him, but with Kittle out, and he's kind of the main receiver they have left. So I don't mind him either. If you just want to say I believe in San Francisco's offense to move the ball here, I don't mind the full stack. Gavin, who's your favorite QB this week?
I'm with JD on this one. I like Drake May. I think that out of all these quarterbacks, you want somebody that's going to run the ball for you. And I think that he's the one that I trust the most out of the mobile quarterbacks.
So when 2 of the 3 of us say the same person, you guys already know who to X out. You're not playing Drake May because now he's going to have like 8 points. So no, I'm just kidding.
No, I was going to say, honestly, I'm thinking about jumping on Drake May. Hey, I will say Brock Purdy has an 18.5 rush yards prop. He's not immobile. Like he can do it, and he often does it in the red zone. So like, keep that in mind. There's a little upside there.
I think too, it actually helps him that it looks like Pearsall is going to play this week, and he does better when he has that deep threat there to kind of help take the top as well. So I think
Pearsall is awesome. I would love to play Pearsall if I knew he was healthy. It's like he's a guy that I might even play in Showdown, just take a chance on it.
He said something like, "Oh yeah, I can run like in a straight line" or something like that, and I'm like, "Oh, well, that's really reassuring."
Yeah, he said that he can't fall on his knee. If he lands on his knee, he's done.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can click on that in DFS. Like one bad fall and it's over. But I'm glad he's giving it a go because, like you said, it definitely helps that offense.
Yeah, I think it does. So
all right. Well, this was fun. good pod. I wonder if the people, if you watch this as a recording, let us know in Discord if it was made better or worse by the inclusion of the live aspect. I'm curious what that experience ends up being like, if it's any different. But all right, great weekend ahead. We got a main slate write-up coming soon, and we'll see you guys in Discord. Thanks for joining me, Gavin. Thanks for joining me, JD.
Guys, have a good one.
As always.